So this moment again where Cecily and Gwendolyn embrace, and then Jack and Algernon groan and walk up and down. We have this sense of deception threatening the social fabric, the coherence of the relationships of individuals. That's very much like the birthday party. Um, but at this point in time, that threat to the social fabric is ultimately what resolves itself and ends up becoming. It sort of segues into resolution in the conclusions of the plays. The deceptions that we're thinking about in terms of the social fabric and the birthday party, obviously Stanley's self-deception, Goldberg and McCann's um, deceptive, I think, dissemblance as figures of sort of beneficent geniality when actually really they are figures of threat and malice. Those deceptions are what threaten the social fabric in the play. But again, you can say from Goldberg and McCann's perspective, Stanley's self-delusions, as they would call them, threaten their vision of what the social fabric ought to be constructed from. Jack slowly and hesitatingly says, Gwendolyn, Cecily, it is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth, which is obviously deliberately satirical and invites a comparison with Blanche, the way that particularly Stanley Kowalski talks about lie. There's no reality. It's lies and nonsense and conceit. It's the first time in my life I've ever been reduced to such a painful position, and I'm really quite inexperienced in doing anything of the kind. Which is again, like Blanche, this constant sense of her inauthenticity, but here it's a product of his, he's being forcibly jockeyed into being truthful rather than having his deceptions unravelled as part of some kind of menacing threat to his identity. However, I will tell you quite frankly that I have no brother Ernest. I have no brother at all. I've never had a brother in my life, and I certainly have not the smallest intention of ever having one in the future. And then this is a really ironic foreshadowing, because obviously the resolution of this plot, the thing that makes all of this aestheticized reality and makes all their whimsical fantasies plausible, is that this seemingly honest declaration actually ends up itself becoming a lie. And so reality here becomes a lie later on in the play, and the lies become the reality. So this foreshadowing here is actually the mirror image almost, in terms of the reverse of Blanche's longing, that the longed for reality becomes truth, and the painful truth becomes a lie. We have that great sense of contrast here between the two plays. And then they both talk. It's not a very pleasant situation for a young girl suddenly to find herself in, that neither of us is married to anyone. Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to come after us there. No, men are so cowardly, aren't they? And they retire into the house with scornful looks. And so their dominance here is actually signified by their retreat into the house, and this ironic suggestion that the men won't be brave enough to actually occupy that space, which is, again, in terms of the use of space here and the use of the set, is the reverse of what happens in Streetcar, where Stanley Kowalski dominates the space and shows his power through that physical domination of the set and the environment. Jack and Algernon then speak. Well, one must be serious about something if one wants to have any amusement in life. I happen to be serious about Bunbury. What on earth you are serious about? I haven't got the remotest idea. About everything, I should fancy. You have such an absolutely trivial nature. And so here, Algernon is criticising Jack for his earnestness, that he's being serious about everything, and because of that is absolutely trivial, and that he should seek to be more fanciful. And so here Algernon's vision of reality is like that magic that Blanche longs for, the way that things ought to be, the truth that they ought to have, that aesthetic beauty and moral purity that she supposedly believes in, and that is missing in the play. The bottom of the page. There's certainly no chance of you marrying Miss Cardew now. I don't think there's any much likelihood, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax being united. Well, that is no business of yours. Algernon says, if it was my business, I wouldn't talk about it. And he eats muffins. It's very vulgar to talk about one's business. Only people like stockbrokers do that, and then merely at dinner parties. And we have this, this is precisely what Goldberg and McCann did. So that you can imagine Algernon criticising these sort of hollow orthodox figures who only talk of business as if it's this empty pursuit. And so this suggestion of it being vulgar to talk about one's businesses is entirely the reverse of their values. It's vulgar not to talk about orthodox things like business and their birthday party. Algernon says, I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. The butter would probably get on my cuffs. One should always eat muffins calmly. It's the only way to eat them. And so this sense of indulgence, which is like Blanche's drinking, I think, again, precipitates or reveals a moment of crisis always. Algernon is in a crisis of a vision of reality. Should reality be about truth, or should it be about beautiful aesthetic reality? Then both of those symbols and motifs communicate to a crisis of the vision of reality. Algernon says, when I'm in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. So again, that sense of crisis and eating it is used as a motif here. And then Jack rising, well, there's no reason why you should eat them all in that greedy way. And then Algernon offers a tea cake. I wish you would have tea cake instead. I don't like tea cake. So the sexual rivalry, again, is manifested through this action over the tea cakes. The food itself it becomes the symbol of this sexual rivalry and competition. And then it's developed further down the page. That maybe even muffins are the same. He seizes the muffin dish from Jack. So they're having this meaningless argument over the types of cake they're eating, but actually the real power relations between them is being communicated through this physical use of a prop and the food that functions as a symbol in the play. Algernon then says, you can't possibly ask me to go without having some dinner. It's absurd. I never go without my dinner. No one ever does except vegetarians and people like that. And so here, gentility is feigned to mask a kind of corruption here. That they use this sort of insistence of politeness here to prevent him from being kicked out. But the irony is that it actually exposes the sort of fretwork of this corruption, that they end up revealing their own fabrications through this attempted sort of enforced politeness upon each other in these exchanges. Over the page, I know my constitution can stand it. If you're not quite sure you're ever having been christened, I must say I think it rather dangerous you're venturing on it now. You can hardly have forgotten that someone very close connected with you was very nearly carried off this week in Paris by a severe chill. Yes, but you said yourself that a severe chill was not heredity. It used to be, I know, but I dare say it is now. So again, we've got that sense of them using their own fabrications against each other. And that this is similar to Blanche, but it's something that she loses control of, and that in the end becomes part of her tragic downfall, that other people get control of her aestheticized visions of reality and herself and use them to destroy her. And then the curtain line here. I haven't quite finished my tea yet, and there is still one muffin left. And then Jack groans and sinks into a chair, and Algernon still continues eating. The symbol shows that their passivity in sexuality and their desire is almost the opposite of Blanche's drinking, because Blanche's drinking is an evasion from reality and male dominance, whereas this is a symbol of passivity and sexuality that is not necessarily an evasion from reality, but is a forced expression, a forced expression of sexual desire that shows that they're struggling to negotiate reality on their own terms.